All right, ladies and gentlemen, welcome to another episode of the Irrational Confidence Podcast. We're talking college football, and the 2025-20 season is in the books. The Indiana Hoosiers are national champions. It is a glorious day for the Hoosier State. 2 years ago, anyone in their right mind would have told you that there is no way this would happen. Curt Cignetti gets hired from JMU, turns one of the most epic turnarounds of all time. I'm joined by my co-host, Fresh, capping off 5 years of this podcast here. What better way to cap off the 5 years with an Indiana Hoosier national title game? If our teams aren't going to be in the national title game, I got to have a game like that every single time.
Is it amazing? Yes. It's the greatest turnaround of all time. We were kind of joking. You played NCAA football back in the day. Because I'm not even going to include the college football like 2025, 2026. 25 maybe because the roster was undiscovered. But if you had played the original games, we all would be like Iowa State or Kansas or Indiana. And you would put it on freshman mode and try to go win a national championship in 3 years. Curt did it in 2. And he did it on Heisman mode. And he brought players from JU, he brought players from all around the country. He was never actually getting the highest guy in the transfer portal. Mendoza wasn't the top quarterback in the portal. He got guys who came in and played. Veterans. I mean, yes, it's been told that the average age of the team is 23, and they're guys who were on their 5th, 6th, 7th year, and they're grown men, so they were ready to play football at a high level. But grown men are old, and there's guys in the NFL who suck. These guys played at a high level and they executed together. The biggest thing I saw, the Ohio State Indiana Big Ten title game, that was 2 teams that already knew they were a top 4 seed. I'm just going through the motions. I didn't really take too much of Indiana winning that game. It was like, all right, you know what? One had to win, one had to lose. It was 13-10. Whatever. Indiana played Alabama and completely eviscerated. It was like, all right, you know what? Maybe they're better than we thought. We'll see what happens when they play Oregon and they get that revenge game. And they beat the living bleep out of the Ducks. That game wasn't even there was no pulse from Oregon. And it's like, all right, this team now, they have officially arrived, in my opinion, because they got Oregon fully focused in a rematch and they wiped the floor with them. Coming into this game, we saw what Miami's front 7 had done defensively. We kind of knew their secondary. Deontay Scott had made some plays, but he had done it because the pass rush had been so good. And you could be more instinctive. Indiana's offensive line handled them. And then what's the impressive part is that Indiana's defensive line overwhelmed the Miami offensive line, and they were outweighed on average by 50 pounds a player. They were faster to the gaps. They were breaking off, letting kind of blocks. They were getting the second level. They were dominating. And even in short yards plays, they were in the backfield making plays. This was a team that was hungry from the very start, determined. How they get drafted, how they do the NFL, I don't really care, because their job was to win a national championship here. And it doesn't matter how they pan out in the NFL. They accomplished the task here. Mendoza, there's some also, poetic justice things that happened, or kind of little tidbits. When he played at Cal last year, the player that knocked him out of the Miami-Cal game was the player he ran over and scored a touchdown on the draw. The corner who picked off the pass for Indiana is related to the Miami corner who was called for pass interference in the Ohio State-Miami championship game back in the day. Same family, going to Miami title hopes 2 times. It's a storyline, obviously, Cristobal and his dad going to, Christopher Columbus High School and being close by. All that came to just a perfect ending. And as a Georgia fan and all the storylines that Carson Bet, he did what we all expected him to do. He underthrew a receiver. He had no reason to throw a touchdown there. They had tons of time on the clock. They were moving the ball. No reason to go for broke in a double coverage to throw a pick, but he did it, and he underthrew the room. Everything played out almost like we thought would be like a story. You had the starting, you had the drama, and the storylines all played out from there. Major kudos to Indiana. But that game in itself was a fantastic football game. Because it was 10-0 Indiana, and then Miami had the field goal off the end rate. You're kind of like, maybe that was their chance. Indiana sort of hangs around, but then Miami get the Fletcher touchdown, stay in it. Tony shows up, makes some plays. They were there, and they had a chance. But Indiana bucked up, and they got the job done. Major kudos to Curt Cignetti, the entire team. They got, I'm going to say, 100 players on that roster and all the coaches on the same page and executed at the highest level. Congratulations. And at the very, very end, keep the storyline thing going. Lee Corso, Indiana, as a head coach, got Indiana's first bowl win. They got 3 this year to tie all-time bowl wins the year he retires from College Game Day, win national championship. If there aren't things that happen in this universe you believe in, that things are sort of tied, that one's pretty cool.
Yeah. Fresh. I put that out on Twitter here last night at the game. It kind of dawned on me that we started off the 2025 college football season with the retirement of Lee Corso. He was at the Texas-Ohio State game, and he's on the field putting the mascot head on for the very, very last time. He's celebrated. And I know a lot of people will look and say, like, Lee Corso is well known for his time at Florida State. But really, for us who know him as Coach Corso more, I think we're more familiar with him in his job he did at Indiana. And the ability to take a once failing program and get them to just being bowl eligible and being able to be competitive in that realm. And he winds up getting fired from Indiana and still like doesn't hate on them. There's no sour grapes over time. Every time he speaks about Indiana, he spoke very highly of them. And the fact that that was the front of the book of the 2025 college football season, and then the back cover of the book is Indiana winning the national title is just poetic. Like, it is pure cinema. There's nothing better from that. We need Christopher Walken just laying back in the chair with his arms up there as well. I'm going to say this here, Fresh, and I think you did it a lot of justice because of how great that college football game was last night, because it was a remarkable game, one of the best, if not the best game. I would say it's the best game in the 12-team format. I'd have to really go back and look at all the 4-team
I
formats.
wouldn't. The first half was kind of boring.
Right, but
It was a
overall,
lot. It was all
start to
slow.
finish,
There were that Miami Ole Miss game and the Ole Miss Georgia game were very,
both
very
pretty
good.
good. I still like this one because it's for the end all be all. But what I'll say is this: a year ago, I sat here and I told the viewers that have watched us, and those of you guys who know I'm an Ohio State fan, I called last year Ohio State's 4-team run through the college football playoff the most impressive run in the in college football history through the playoffs. At this point, as an Ohio State fan, as a person who celebrated last year for Ohio State Buckeyes, I'll admit I was wrong. I was wrong, and I experienced it this year. What Indiana did in my mind is the greatest, even though they got a first round bye. I look at the Big Ten title game as like that first game. The fact that, you're right, they could have walked through the motion. We both know we're in. We're going to focus in on the playoff, but they went out and beat Ohio State. They got their first, I know they beat Oregon early on in the season and they won some other games along the way, but really slaying the dragon that was Ohio State was the first major win that they had. Then they go in and you beat the brakes off of Alabama. You got 2 logo games right off a jump. Then you get a rematch with Oregon. Dan Lanning's had all this time to stew on this game, think about what he's going to do to Indiana, and you still go out and boat race them. And then you win a hard-fought, slug-it-out battle versus Miami. What the Indiana Hoosiers have done in 2025, 26 here is the most impressive run in college football history. I don't care who you are. I don't care what you've accomplished for where that program was 2 years ago. And I know we've said it before here on the show, what Curt Cignetti has brought into that program. He brought in accountability. He brought in guys that love football. Because again, I see people all the time on X and they're sitting there going, and again, I know that these are the lunatic fringe out there on X, but they're sitting there saying, oh, all it took was Mark Cuban's money and blah, 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 and they bought a team. I go, yeah, okay, Mark Cuban definitely got involved and he put in money for the NIL, but their NIL value is still not even in the top 10. And if it was that easy just to buy a national championship, everyone else had a shot at these players. These weren't like 5-star, like cream of the crop guys in the transfer portal. Like, they knew what they were doing. They scouted, they brought a team together, and they brought a team together and coached that team up. They have the right head coach in place. They were missing a quarterback. Mendoza's the quarterback. They added him this year, and they have all the other right pieces around him. It was a perfect season by them. I don't care what I can ever say. Again, this is as a Buckeye fan, as a fan who was in the Big Ten and looking at all those things. This is the most impressive thing I've ever seen in college football. And kudos to them because they deserve their flowers. They deserve all the praise that they get. Miami played a heck of a game. Ruben Baines, that guy's going to be a monster on Sunday. Like,
Bain and Messidor were dominant.
and again, Miami can hold their head up high. Like, Miami played a hell of a game in this one. Like, again, Sid from Ice Age showed up, even though I kind of want to retire the monarch, but Sid from Ice Age showed up at the end, and he just did Sid from Ice Age thing. So, but Carson Beck is Jacksonville's own, which I always forget unless until they show the Manor and Fritz. But again, I've just been so impressed by Indiana.
I mean, Mendoza, his run on the quarterback draw and is taking it on, putting his body out there. That was a guy who looked determined. Like, I'm going to win this title. I'm taking this thing home with me. You haven't seen that kind of vigor or fire from Carson Beck. I was even trying to think last night. When he was at Georgia, did he ever stick his nose in, make a play like that? I'm going to be the guy and dive in double off. He might have, but I can't think off the top of my head where he actually was charging forward. And going to put the foot down and really lay his shoulder in somebody and fight for that extra yard, score a touchdown. So it's just he wants to be the NFL quarterback. He has the form, but his decision making is questionable when it matters. He has 6 losses to his shoulder, and 3 of them he's on the pick in the last play of the game. The script, we know who it is, and at some point it was coming. No, I'm not going to take away from the Indiana defense because they were on their heels, but they still kept fighting. That secondary was getting winded. Miami was in a groove, and that's why I was still even questioning why he went for all of it with, I think, 35, 40 seconds left of the clock about midfield. You had him. You can move the football, get yourself a little bit more organized, get better plays, keep chipping away, throw it into that coverage. And I had somebody text me like, oh, the receiver and him ran the wrong route. We're supposed to run a 30-yard dig into the middle of the field. I was like, no, he wasn't. The receivers run a go route, and Carson threw it immediately. There was no attempt to go. Like, he did not run the wrong route. It was a go, and immediately he takes a snap. It's one look, and the ball is gone up the sideline. It was a go route the whole way. He underthrew it. Don't give me this nonsense that it was supposed to be a 30-yard dig at the 5-yard line into the end zone. That receiver made no attempt. And Carson, if it was supposed to be a dig, he would have thrown it on the post. It would have been picked off. So you can make excuses for him. It was a bad throw. Nobody read he didn't look back for the ball. He didn't come back to fight for it because he thought the ball was going to be, here's a thought, in the end zone and not 2 yards behind him. But it is what it is. And you know what? Indiana's defense made the plays. They got off the field. They shut them down early, too. Being in Miami, that defense, the momentum was there, and they found ways to get stops. It was 10-0 at halftime. And that right there kind of gave them that's like, all right, now we keep going. Miami scored, and then Indiana came right back and scored every single time to keep that at bay. They never let them get that game tied. And that just shows a team that had resolve, a team that was prepared and ready to play a full 60-minute flight. Major kudos to, Cignetti and that entire staff. And, the little sidebar, we talked about fortunate. You talked about the NIL, Curt Cignetti also interviewed for Mississippi State. Mississippi State fans, you had a chance. Now, maybe they didn't offer him enough. Maybe he realized someone told him he didn't want to play the SEC, but you know what? He found the right fit at Indiana. I don't care what conference you go to. If you're at Indiana, you still had to go through Michigan and Ohio State and Penn State. He took on the challenge no matter where he went. He was taking on the challenge, and he accomplished the task. So major, awesome, success for Indiana. Where do you go from here? Yes, they have Josh Hughes coming up, but now the expectation is playing for being a Final Four team. You're in the semifinal every year. If you're playing in the semifinal, it's a successful season, but that is now the bar that you've set. Can you sustain? We've seen LSU goes up to 1 and they kind of drop back in. You have that one team that rises up. Michigan State had those 2 years in the college football playoff, and they've been non-existent ever since. It's can you be sustained? The one thing about Ohio State over time is they are always there. 9 out of 10 times, they are playing in the top 5, finishing every single year. Can you sustain that success? And that's Curt Cignetti's, next challenge is as a joyous moment it is for Indiana football. Now it's all changed. And someone actually tweeted out a picture from his first ever game at Indiana 2 years ago, August 31st, 2024. It's from one side of the field, probably the home side, looking across at kickoff, and they maybe 100 people. Not anymore. They have got everyone believing. They've got everyone in attendance. They've got everyone seeing there's a chance to win. And now you can keep building on that success and moving forward. So really, really cool times there in Bloomington. They're no longer a basketball school. They're a football school. And, times are changing.
Yeah. And I think that's the same thing. Like what you just said there is a perfect encapsulation of like Alabama, because we've gotten so used to Alabama setting this just high standard, and the standard's fallen off. The standard's fallen off for Alabama. And go back and say, like, I told you at the end of the season, I no longer view Alabama in the lens that I used to. I legitimately would say, Fresh, that they're in college football right now. There are only two elite teams that are going to be consistently there at the end of the year. And again, we didn't plan this, we didn't talk about it, but it's the two teams we root for. It's Ohio State and Georgia. We know that push comes to shove. In the worst case scenario, they're going to both be 10-2. Worst case scenario, most likely, maybe 9-3 if injuries just decimate a team like in this day and age. And then it's everyone else. And I think, there's a bunch of teams that are kind of right below those two. I put Indiana in that group now. You won a national title. You are rising up. You are an amazing story. I can't wait to see what you do next year. But you're in that group that is up there. You now need to deliver sustained success. And again, I wouldn't necessarily say, again, the expectation probably isn't, the semifinals, I do like that because I do believe in setting your expectations high. But I think that if you can just, if you're routinely landing in the college football
Quarterfinal.
playoff every single year in, year out, you're in the college football playoff every single year. Sometimes you're in the quarterfinals, sometimes you make semis, sometimes you're playing for a national title game, but somewhere, as long as you're being competitive, it's not like, I'm getting bounced in the first round every single year playing, then you might want to have a conversation. But I think that's kind of where Indiana is. Well, I want to ask you this question, Fresh, because I was thinking about this on my way home from work today. And I was thinking about like the story that is the Indiana Hoosiers. I measure and again, you may have a different one, but I think the Miracle on Ice is probably the greatest US sports story of all time. Like the underdog sports story, I would say Miracle on Ice. I'm a big fan of the 1985, or maybe I have the year wrong, maybe it's 83. NC State Survive and Advance team with Jim Valvano. One, because I'm a giant Jim Valvano fan. And I thought about like all of the underdog stories in sport history. And I think 30 years from now, Indiana Hoosiers in the 2025 season, like they may eventually get to sustained success year after year, but this is going to go down in the annals of not just college football, but in all of sports, of the one of the greatest underdog stories and turnaround stories of all time. And I just kind of was wondering, getting your thoughts of where does it, like, again, in my mind, Miracle on Ice is just that story with the Russians and all of that stuff. And you have to understand the whole geopolitical scene at the time too, and how big of a deal that was. I know that there's other sports stories out there, but where do you put this in that underdog sports story? I want to say Mount Rushmore, maybe like top 5-ish or something like that.
I would say it's top five. Because you kind of look at special with the '07 Giants.
Yeah.
That team was if you watch the regular season, that team's pretty average at best. And then they got into playoffs and they go beat the Cowboys with the 1 seed. They go to Dallas on Wild Card Weekend. They whoop them. They get to the divisional round win. Then they go to Frigid Lambeau and Brett Favre, the last game of the Packer, and take it overtime, win that game, and then they beat the undefeated Patriots. That heralded run. Obviously, they're not undefeated, but the run in the NFL, that's pretty impressive. Team USA, Miracle on Ice, number one. Uh, in comparison, though, from a global sports perspective, Leicester City, a decade ago, about winning the Premier League. They were recently promoted up from the second division, from the championship. And they go beat, the Man Cities, the Man Uniteds, the Arsenals, the Tottenhams, and the Liverpools of the league, accomplishing a feat, and did it with grace and with the cushion, with no one's ever seen before. It's usually the Power Six, and that's about it. That was probably the closest where a team comes literally out of nowhere, where in professional sports having no chance whatsoever and winning a championship in a decisive manner. From a baseball perspective, the other thing that kind of popped in my mind was the '97 Marlins. Now, yes, they had a bunch of old veteran players, but it was still their fourth year of existence. And they beat an Indians team, as you would know, that was loaded.
Oh, I hate that one.
But then coming out of, they start 93, 94, 95, 96, and then that '97 season going and win the World Series with a bunch of veterans. They were relatively unknown. Nobody was going to games until that team got on a run. And Livian Hernandez, was pitching amazing. So it's just sports are the greatest unknown. And you can say, yes, there are gambling probes and gambling issues and point shaving in different games, but in the end, people compete. And there are going to be, for the one-off, Joe Schmoes, and you can sidebar, the basketball point shaving scandal, we're all mid-major schools who, they were just guys trying to get some cash. And they aren't going after the big firms because the NIL payment's bigger anyway. But that's my point of sports, people compete. And you are going to fight and claw. And if you are on the same page, you can achieve something that nobody else can. In sports in general, the competition, where it's track and field, where it's swimming, you are competing against everybody else. But even the great equalizer of team sports, where everybody has to be on the same page and work in sync. It's not a single track and field runner who can just run faster than everybody else or out hurdle someone or be a Michael Phelps and not swim everybody. You've got to compete with everybody being on the same page consistently over time, not just one great game every single night to win a championship. We can see like in the playoff, in the 12-team playoff, we've seen upsets. We've seen, teams that had a great season over a longevity stumble in the first round. Called Georgia. That's a one-game setting for a team to come out and play perfect, and they keep building up. It means you have to keep playing at a high level every single week. Doesn't matter how great the regular season was. It's a great reward, but you got to deliver when the lights are getting the brights. And you'll see teams who, in a regular season of a sport, they're like, how did the one seed lose? They've been so dominant. Well, the regular season, you have X amount of games to build up that record and earn that seed. But then when the game's not for the playoffs, you got to show up again and play at elite level every single night consistently to get through. Whether it's a one game or it's series, you got to dominate. It's a very, very tough thing to do. So when you see what Indiana's done, 11-2 last year, make the playoff. This year, 16-0, the first 16-0 team since the 1800s. I don't care who you are. Some even said, well, that's 3 straight national champions who haven't had to play a Power 4 team out of non-conference in the regular season. You know what? They had to play Power 4 teams in the playoff. And for other people who argue about SEC teams playing an SES team, in the end, they're going to have to play something in the playoffs. So who cares? Because that's exactly what other teams have done. Whether the schedule begin at the end of the year, playoff is what you're going to have to do. And you show up and get it done in January and December, and Indiana has. It really, in my opinion now, not like the Mount Rushmore, but other teams who have had the resources, like Oregon.
All right. Texas.
Now they expect
Tech.
Well, I'm not going to say Texas Tech because it's really a one-year blip. But Oregon, you've had the resources for decades. Texas, there you go. But Oregon, you haven't won national championship. You've had the resources for a long, long time. We've seen great quarterbacks. We've seen great offenses go. You just had a conference rival beat you twice and go win a national championship and do it in 2 years under a new regime. It's going to start raising some questions. Florida fans, hey, you hired Billy Napier. He's flamed out. We hired John Summerall now. You got to win national championship in 2 years. Like, this is what it is. This whole 3 to 4 year plan is over with some of these schools because now they're like, well, if they did it, why can't you? Buck up, let's get it done. And it wasn't, it wasn't an easy road. They had to play teams. They had to go up and show up and get it done. So there's no more excuses for anybody anymore.
Right. And it's a different day and age we're living in now, Fresh. And I gotta admit, like, I was hesitant on the 12-team playoff. I didn't know if I wanted us to go to 8, not 12. But after 2 years of it, I gotta admit, I really love the 12-team playoff. I've enjoyed it. I really don't want to see it expand again because I'm actually liking what I'm saying. But when I went back, yeah, 12 is fine to me. I like how we're arguing that, like, who should get in. I think you need to tweak a few things. You don't need to overhaul. You need to just make tweaks. But going back to, like, I finally thought of something the two things I could think of comparing this to, like, the underdog sports story of Indiana Hoosiers. Again, Miracle on Ice, #1 of all time there. But the Butler Bulldogs making the NCAA tournament and the championship game back-to-back seasons, insanely impressive. I know they had, some Gordon Hayward and some other players on there as well. And then also I just thought of Buster Douglas knocking out Mike Tyson as a long shot. And Mike Tyson, people forget how dominant Mike Tyson was as a boxer. And you start putting that Indiana is in that conversation now of the greatest sports stories of all time. And I can't wait.
Sports are hard.
Yeah. I can't wait to see 30 for 30.
That 30 for 30 would be fun. I can't wait to see the next Miami version of the Curt 3.
Yeah, that'll be fun too.
A couple scandals that pop up and, maybe they show a picture of Carson Beck's all of his relationship, connections and how those stories kind of circulate like they did on the game last night. That would be entertaining
Is that his
and make it
girlfriend?
that's his girlfriend. I'm not going to talk about how she is famous, but it's
She's a graduate student at Miami, isn't she?
there's activities
No, I'm
that make
sure.
her famous.
Well, she's just a lowly graduate student at Miami right now. So we'll just keep it at that. Yep, exactly. Air quotes there. Just like Carson Beck's a graduate student, I guess, after
I haven't been in
not
class
taking
in
class.
2 years.
Right. But still academically eligible. Fresh, let's cap it at that. This has been an amazing year, guys. Hit that subscribe button up there. Hit the notification bell. Get notified all year long because Fresh and I, we're not done for the year. We're closing the book on the 2025 college football season, and it's going down as, in my mind, the greatest season of all time. 7 used to kind of have that title there, and I think 2025 has taken it from it. We had everything and anything. I spent a good portion of time going through and looking back on the whole season here, Fresh. It has been a wild ride. 5 years of this podcast, and guess what, ladies and gentlemen? We are not going anywhere. We will be back for a 6th season, and we're just getting started. We don't go on vacation or anything like that once the season's over. And we just transitioned to new, fun, more different sports stories that we will talk to you guys about. And we're only 3 weeks away from pitchers and catchers there, Fresh. So Power Alley will be coming back soon.
Yep, Power Rally's gonna come out. Got a new episode coming out this week talking about off season, kind of hot stoving it, getting us ready for baseball classic, and then looking at spring training. So yeah, we're ramping up. Yeah, NCAA tournaments coming. Got the NFL draft coming. A lot of content coming your way from SpinableSports.com, Spinable Sports YouTube channel. So subscribe, hit us up on the X's at Power Rally Pod, at IR Confidence Pod, at Spinable Sports. A lot of great things coming away, a lot of great content. And hey, we got the Super Bowl coming. So we got our NFL playoff previews for the championship weekend, and whichever 2 lucky teams are able to survive and make their way to the Super Bowl, we'll get you after that too.
Yeah. And if you're anything like myself, for a baseball fan who pays absolutely zero attention once your team's out of it and completely turn off the sport of baseball, make sure you check out Fresh's podcast because it'll get you all up to date what you need to know going into baseball season. Because like me, I don't pay attention to baseball once my Guardians are out of it. And I'm sure that my Guardians will be out of it sometime in July again this year. Get me right back ready for college football season. So
You do know they won the division. They've been a
they
playoff
did.
team the past 2 years. 2 years in a row.
They've got uniforms and everything.
Uniforms, everything, yeah.
I know Cleveland still had a baseball team. They got uniforms and everything. And once they announce, someone please sign. I need a guy named Jake Taylor on the team. All right, folks, that's it for our national title preview here. What we have recapped the entire season. Special thanks to our producer Drew. Without him, none of this is possible. Make sure you check it out on SpinableSports.com. Lock in the rest of the way. Leave us the comments behind. Leave us the notifications. Leave us everything you want. Interact with us on social media. We enjoy talking to you guys. This is what we do this for. We talk sports. Heck of a season in the books. Fresh. I loved every minute of it. Now we move on to some other fun topics. And who knows who will show up on the podcast. So make sure you're tuning in every single week.
A lot of great stuff coming. I know we got the ice storm hitting a couple weekends here next couple cold in the wintertime. So if you're stuck in the house, put us on the YouTube, post the podcast, this one up, and we'll do some content. Until next time, we'll talk to y'all later. Hit us up, SpinableSports.com, Spinable Sports YouTube channel. And we'll catch you with our championship Sunday preview after that. Until then, talk to y'all later. Bye, y'all.